I read a quote recently from a lady named Mandy Hale. She said, "Single is no longer a lack of options, but a choice to refuse to let your life be defined by your relationship status." So what are some of the considerations of being single and retired? We'll dive into some of those on today's show. Well, welcome to the Retirement Answer Man Show, where we are on a mission to help you not just survive retirement, but to thrive in retirement. I am your host, Roger Whitney, along with my awesome sidekick, Nicole Mills. Let's get on with the show. An email I get a lot, and it's valid, is, "Hey man, you always talk about married couples. You always talk about retirement as if you are married. What about me? I am single, I'm divorced, I'm widowed, I've never been married. What considerations are there for me?" And that's a valid question and criticism of the show. I have lots of individual clients that are single, some never been married, some divorced, some widowed. And there are some considerations for people in that segment. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. But even more, in a month or so, we are going to have the next edition of Retirement Plan Live. That is the live case study where we work with one of you, the listener, in building a retirement roadmap. And we all get to listen in and watch the results. And we're going to do this edition of Retirement Plan Live. Again, it's about a month or two away, with a single person, someone who is not married that has these issues. So my request to you is, we are looking for candidates for this Retirement Plan Live, someone that is single, that wants to have a roadmap built for free and share a little bit, but also work with me privately to deal with some of the issues that you might be facing. So if you are interested in putting your name in the hat and having a quick chat with me to see if it's right, go to rogerwhitney.com, click on Ask a Question, enter your question, and then Nicole will follow up to schedule something. So we're going to do that because it is a big consideration, as you'll see when we talk about it in the Hot Topic segment. So, hey, let's get through that important disclaimer. Not through it, because it is important. And then let's go talk about being single in retirement. Now, I don't usually do this, but I'm going to do it. We walk life with clients, helping them not just survive, but thrive in retirement. And we are pretty passionate about it, and we have a process, and we are accepting new clients. So if you are looking for a financial advisor to help you not just figure out the financial aspect of it, but to really walk life with you to make sure that you can make the most of the only life you have, go to rogerwhitney.com, click on Work with Roger, and we can set up what we call a fit meeting, which is a quick chat with no decisions to be made to see if we might be a fit to work together. If we are, and you become a client, then you can take advice from me. But don't take advice from me on the show because I don't know anything about you. I'm not a fiduciary to you. So this is helpful hints and education. And before you make any decisions, talk to your legal advisor, your financial advisor, or your tax advisor, because that's just common sense. Now let's go figure out how to rock being single in retirement. I was reading an article recently on the Huffington Post of all things, and I don't normally read there, but it's a little bit dated, but I bet you the statistics aren't that far off. In the 50 to 54 age range, there are equal numbers of single men and single women, approximately. Between the ages of 60 and 64, there are 2.3 single women for every single man. And by the age of 70 to 74, the ratio is 4 women, single women, to every single man. So being single in retirement is generally a lady issue. I think the other statistic I saw, I don't remember the exact number, but it indicated that men are far more likely to get remarried quickly than women in their 60s and 70s. Men just hate being alone. They can't handle it, evidently. Now, that's a dramatic statement, but you get the point. But so we're mainly talking about a issue for ladies. And in fact, according to the U.S. Census, over 1/2 of women over age 65 are single because they don't get remarried near as much and they live longer than men. So if women live longer and they don't get remarried or married at all near as much as men, that means more and more women are going to be living alone in retirement. And I have a number of clients that are ladies that have never been married or are widowed or are divorced, and they have amazing lives. And it's fun to walk life with them because they are truly alive. So it doesn't have to be a negative for sure, but it does present some considerations because on average, women spend more on healthcare than men. So what are some of these considerations if you're thinking of retiring and being single, right? So we're going to dive into that in a specific case study in Retirement Plan Live, and we definitely want someone who has a spirit to want to share that journey to put their name in the hat. But let's talk a little bit about some of the considerations of someone that's single. Well, let's talk about the financial end of things. So just because you're single doesn't mean your life is half as expensive. It's not. It's almost the same amount because you still got to have the household. You still have to have utilities. You still have to have transportation. So it's a little bit more of a burden when you're single to provide for the lifestyle you want because you don't have two people working and rowing the boat. You just have yourself. So from a financial perspective, there are some considerations because it's not going to be half as cheap as if you were married. So that means there's more pressure to build resources, whether that's income resources or asset resources, to support yourself in retirement. And again, you only have one person working to building those assets or income sources, so you're just going to rely on you a lot more. Another financial aspect is understanding your Social Security options because you're going to make that decision a little bit differently because you're single and you're not worried about survivor benefits. And you may have some benefits from past marriages that you want to make sure you're aware of in order to maximize that benefit. It also goes to pension decisions. If you have a pension, you may opt to take life only because that would be the highest dollar benefit because you don't need to have money for someone else unless you have some legacy goal that you're trying to work. So there's going to be some decisions that you need to make. Now, one thing when you're single also, and this comes to some of the life aspect of it, it may make sense to consider more seriously guaranteed income streams, whether that's an annuity that's paying income or something that is giving you a series of payments similar to a pension because it's going to be guaranteed by whatever company is backing it. But also, as you get older, you have a more consistent cash flow in the event that you're not able to manage your assets near as effectively. So that's something to consider. And then on the risk end of it, you may not have any need for life insurance or less of a need because you don't have someone that has to be taken care of if you die prematurely. But you do face a bigger risk when it comes to, say, a long-term care event, just from a financial perspective, because it's going to be totally reliant on you and what resources you have. So long-term care insurance may be something that you need to consider more seriously than potentially a married couple, which has some flexibility. So there are a lot of things in the financial realm that, and I'm just touching on a few, that are important when you're retiring as a single person because everything's reliant upon you. There's not a joint effort of making, whether it's income or managing the assets. There's not that partner to help pick up the slack in the event or during a little season where you can't. So you want to be much more intentional about how you structure your financial aspect of it. Now, something that's a little softer is thinking about decision making. Even the most diligent and intentional person, when they're in a room by themselves making decisions, whether it's about long-term care insurance, buying a car, buying a house, how to invest your assets when things are good and when things are bad, individuals tend to make less consistent prudent decisions when they're doing it by themselves. Not because they don't have the ability or the intelligence, it's because there's less of a feedback loop or sounding board to mitigate our natural emotional state of fear, greed, and past history of how we've made decisions. It's much easier as a single person to get caught into a sales cycle. You get a master salesperson, whether it's in the insurance industry or the car industry or anything. I'm always amazed at you get a really great salesperson. They know how to lead someone down a path, and even a very intelligent person is susceptible to that. I know that because I'm fairly intelligent, and I'm totally susceptible to that. So when you're single, you'll want to find some way of having a network, a few trusted people that can help be that sounding board for you to help you protect yourself. Now, from a legal aspect, there's some legal things in there. You really want to make sure that you have your proxies or your powers of attorney, whether it's on healthcare decisions or property decisions, chosen wisely. Because there may be periods of time where you're not able or available to make your health decisions or make decisions, pick up the baton and manage your assets and move money because you're, in a coma, you're in an accident, you are out of pocket, any number of reasons. So having someone or some entity there to pick up that baton when you can't, it's a little bit more important. Beneficiaries, having your beneficiaries chosen, having your executor chosen for your estate. When you pass, who cleans up your estate and closes out your financial life? When you're single, I guess you'll be passed along, so it doesn't matter, from that aspect, you're not dealing with it, but somebody's going to have to, and that could be your kids, or that could be your friends, or whoever. Right now, I'm working on finding a professional executor for a client because they are single and they've never had children. And when they pass, they have specific things that they want to happen from a legacy standpoint. And normally someone will choose a friend, an acquaintance, a family member, just out of convenience because they can't think of anybody. The problem that can arise with that is they are emotional people and people change over time. So who you might have chosen this year may not be the same person you would be comfortable with 5 years from now, which means you have to deal with that. So we're looking for a professional executor, which is someone or an entity that's what they do. You pay a fee and when you pass, they will act as the executor and make very reasoned decisions without all the emotional or ethical baggage that an individual can bring. You definitely want to have an in case of emergency plan in place, an ICE plan. Okay, who does what, where, when, if I'm not around? And then obviously long-term care needs to be evaluated. And on a side note there, I'm doing a lot of research on long-term care and changing my views a little bit and have found a couple really great resources that we may be producing content on. I know we're doing it individually for clients, really addressing this, but we're going to dive into that a little bit more to make sure we're covering our bases there. And then another consideration when you're single is you want to have a network, right? Who is going to let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Who's going to let the dogs out when you're on your weekend trip? Who is going to climb that ladder to change the light bulb or fix the fence, mow the yard? Who's going to drive you when you need driven? I mean, you could use Uber and things like that. I remember when I got my knee surgery, I guess it was 2 years ago now, and my wife was working, and I'm Mr. Macho Guy. I don't need anybody to help me. I can go there and everything else. And then I get there, and the doctor or the lady at the surgical center, well, Mr. Whitney, you can't drive yourself home. What are you talking about? I felt like a old grumpy guy. So I had to get my father-in-law to come get me. But I didn't have anybody to just go to. I didn't want to go to my wife. But if you're single, what do you do if you have a day surgery? You going to have Uber drive you home? That's usually when you probably want somebody that cares about you to sort of love on you a little bit. So transportation, health. Do you have a network of physicians? If you're single, I think it's even more imperative to have relationships with handy people, pet sitters, transportation people, doctors, and have them know each other a little bit more. Create a network of people that can watch your back when you can't or when you're at diminished capacity. a good financial advisor could act as that as well, right? So I think these are some of the considerations that fall into place when you are single in retirement. But here's the key thing is single is a choice, and you can rock retirement and be single. It's just you have to understand some of the specific issues and figure out how to address them as best you can. And that's something we do every day, walking life with clients. So we'll dive into this more when we do the next iteration of Retirement Plan Live. So I'm excited about that. So hopefully this gave you some perspective. Now let's go chat with my very married lady, Nicole Mills, in the practical planning segment. Hey, Nicole, do you know I realized something?
What?
I think you actually reminded me of this the other day as we were talking about this episode. I have never really been single. I got married at like 23.
You were young, yes.
I was young. What do you mean were? That's like past tense. You always do that on the show.
Would you say you're a little older than 23 now?
Okay, I am older than 23. Not quite twice as old, but yes. But I've never been single. Lived like an adult life as a single person. Have you?
I lived by myself for about a year and a half after college.
Oh, with no roommate or anything?
Yep, all by myself.
Okay, so you got that. You got that down. You can check that box. I can't check that box. And I likely will never check that box, right? Because Shauna's going to live a lot longer than I am, more than likely. But anyway, so we've been talking about singlehood. What do you think about being single? Would you be single?
Well, so my mom is single, and I think most of the time she enjoys having the freedom. But I know every once in a while, she just calls me and she just likes to have someone to talk to at the end of the day. So I imagine occasionally it could probably be a little bit lonely.
You think you're on like the top of the call list? You're like, oh, I guess I'll call Nicole because nobody else is available. Which one?
Well, I'm her child, so I hope I'm near the top.
Anyway, we have some questions from some listeners, so why don't we get to those?
Alrighty. Well, our first question is from Kevin, who says that he just listened to our podcast on the value of advisors, and he wants to know, what about finding one?
Yeah.
How do you find the advisor?
And we've talked about that from time to time. I think one of the first episodes ever was on how to find a financial advisor or how to interview one. And we've gotten a lot of comments on that show, which is good because it's an important question of if you're going to use one and you want to use one, are you getting value for it? But how do you actually find one? The typical way people find advisors, in my experience, is through a referral, right? Hey, John, I'm working with this guy over here and they're pretty good. That's not a bad way to get names in the hat. Now, some of the downside of that is you don't know the criteria that your friend uses to evaluate whether they're getting value. So I still think you need to go through your due diligence process because finding a good advisor is like trying to find a good doctor or a good mechanic. There are lots and lots of different specialties. There are lots of different competencies. There are a lot of different levels of ethics and spirit and win-win, win-lose, all those type of dynamics. And it's up to you to ferret it out because a lot of times on the front end, we all sound the same. So that's why. So Kevin, what my first suggestion would be is get the interview worksheet in the Learning Center. And I think I emailed you that. And then go through those questions with your current advisor. You say you work with one. And then how do you find one? One, you could talk to friends. Two, and I think this is the cool thing from a consumer standpoint, is it used to be a local person, right? It used to be somebody that was down the street or in the neighborhood. But now you really can work with an advisor anywhere in the country, which means you have a much bigger pool to choose from. As an example, Nicole, how many states do we have clients in? We just added a state.
I think we're up to 19 or 20.
Yeah, I thought it was like 23. So I have clients in, I guess, 20-ish states that I work with. And I have very few clients. So I'm based in Fort Worth, Texas. I have very few clients that are within 50 miles of me. So if you're looking for an advisor and you want to evaluate someone, go to our website and evaluate us. We would be happy to have a fit conversation with you to see if we're a good fit. But I think using that worksheet to interview an advisor is the best thing you can do to protect yourself because most of the time it's intuitive and the advisor is able to craft their message to you, and you really want to be in control of that initial process. That list of questions will give you a framework for evaluating who really has the level of competency that you need, who has the spirit that you desire, and who serves exactly what you're trying to accomplish. So I would go get that worksheet, but the pool is wide open to you, but I would definitely make sure you're doing due diligence so you're getting the bang for your buck and the money that you're spending.
And Roger, it might be worth mentioning to people, it's not exactly comparable to when you're looking for a doctor or something like that, but because of our financial industry regulations, people can't leave testimonials and stuff like that about advisors the way they do other professionals.
That's a really good point. I had this question the other day in a FIT meeting of, do you have someone I could talk to that you work with? And that's pretty problematic because, I work with my in-laws and my wife never knows when I meet with them because I keep things very private. So it's very difficult to ask someone to go speak to someone else. But your point is correct. In our industry, it is not legal to have testimonials of, hey, I've worked with Roger and he's awesome. Can't do that. In fact, really, the only thing that can be promoted is when there are complaints, which so yeah, nobody wants to promote those, but yeah, you can't get testimonials. Why? Because traditionally this is such a sales industry that those can be manipulated and things like that. Even like on the podcast, if you go to the podcast, we got 150-ish reviews. They review the podcast, not me, and that's a very important distinction. Because that would be a big no-no. So good point, Nicole.
Thank you. Our next question is from David about cash flow buckets. So he writes in, I've heard suggestions that it's wise to keep 1 to 2 years of living expenses in cash during retirement. What are your thoughts on the proper amount of cash to have on hand, and what's the best way to build up that cash? I'm 9 years from retiring, and I only have 3 months of living expenses.
Well, we have a webinar where we go through that cash flow bucket system. And Nicole, I think I promised to
redo it. Yeah.
Redo it. Nicole has
on our list for 2018.
Nicole has this amazing memory of things that I say. It's awesome, but sometimes a little frustrating, but she keeps me honest. So we are going to update that. So, and what it talks about is this bucket system that you're referring to, David, right? It's how do you draw money from your assets during retirement? And the method that I use is we keep roughly 2 years of cash reserves for those, what we categorize as needs with a client, keeping the lights on. And then we keep 1 year of reserves for the more discretionary things that people like to do, travel, buy the boat, gift, things like that. And the reason we keep so much money is it gives us more runway to make more reasoned decisions, right? Because when we have market turmoil, like we did recently, emotions run higher. And if we're dependent on selling assets or drawing from them, and we're in a volatile period, it feels scary. So what we do is we back out the amount needed based on the cash flows that we're getting. So it's the net amount that we know we're going to have to draw from the longer term assets after pensions and Social Security. And we do that in systematic little conversations. But to your point, the proper amount for us is roughly 2 years of those needs and 1 year of those wants. Now, when do you start building up those assets? You're 9 years away. So kudos to you for being so intentional. We start building, a lot of it depends. It depends on because a lot of people will have these big inflows of money right at retirement, whether it's from a deferred comp plan or some other plan. But usually it's about 2 years prior, we're starting to build up the cash reserves, either through savings or through rebalancing. So I would say when you're about 2-3 years out, David, to start building those up in anticipation, because that's when you're going to be really dialing those numbers in from a retirement aspect anyway. So, Nicole, keep me honest. We will dive again back into the subject and redo that webinar so we have a better, more up-to-date training for you.
How about we'll tackle that after the next retirement plan live? Does that sound like a good plan?
Whatever you say, boss.
Okay. Our next question is from a friend of the show, Mark Miller. And he actually wrote in, he's been getting quite a few questions on insurance and healthcare, and he wants to know if we are working on a podcast episode about this. So good news.
Yeah, because I think healthcare before Medicare is something I've said I was going to do for a while. Is that true, Nicole?
Maybe.
So in March, the whole month. So if you notice this month, because we didn't really announce it, this month was all about relationships. Because it's love. It's the month of love, right, Nicole? And if you didn't get a chance, go to the Retirement Answer Man Facebook page and look at the Valentine that Nicole and her husband created for me. They had a little arts and crafts night.
It was very fun, although I keep finding glitter everywhere now. Yes. I don't know if you do.
Yes, there was copious amounts of glitter involved.
And my laptop will never be the same.
And a little disclosure of the fact that you can still be a man and have man crushes. Anyway, but you're going to have to go check the pictures out.
Proof that I listen, too.
Her mind is like a steel trap. Anyway, so Mark, friend of the show from careerpivot.com and the podcast by the same name, has been on the show a few times, and he is working on this healthcare before Medicare question. So Mark, next month, we are doing an entire month of healthcare before Medicare. And I know, and maybe I'll talk to you about this because Mark is exploring living overseas and how healthcare might be part of the answer for healthcare. So yeah, we're going to dive into that. So I know this is super exciting. This is really important because you on the show, most of you are retiring before you qualify for Medicare. So this is an important issue and we're going to tackle it head on, just like we do, right? Right. So we can not just survive, but thrive in retirement. Nicole, I'm already pretty happy, but let's go get happier.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Nicole, give me some happy humming. Oh, Lord. See, now you can't see the little, cha-cha, like 20s dance that she's doing when she makes it. Okay, don't give me that sound. Anyway, welcome to the Happy Lab. Just so you know, Nicole, I was recording that. So, being single and retired. Now, we talked a little bit in the Hot Topic segment about being happy. My only comment on this, Nicole, is I became a much happier person when I learned to be happy with not depending on someone else. Because I got married so young, and you're not very smart when you're young. A lot of times you get married because you're looking at your spouse to complete you, right? And I never lived alone. I never got the chance. And not that I didn't have a happy marriage earlier in life, but I upped my happiness game when I learned not to look at her to make me happy, but that I was responsible for my own happiness. So that's what I got. That's what I think we need to do, whether you're single, married, or whatever, to live a happier life.
To own your happiness.
Own your happiness. Own it. All right, let's go set a smart sprint.
On your marks, get set.
And we're off to set a 7-day sprint to create an amazing retirement. Hey, this is an easy one. In the next 7 days, I want you to noodle on, are you owning your own happiness? Are you looking to other people to make you happy? That's usually a recipe for disaster. This is where, Nicole, reading the Daily Stoic, I'm learning Stoicism is a lot about owning that, owning your mind and your choices. So in the next 7 days, I want to challenge you, whether you're single, married, or whatever, is to evaluate for yourself. Are you owning your own happiness? And can you be happy regardless of what's going on around you? I'm going to add this in there just because I want to. And I've shared this before on the show. One of my daily affirmations that I say before I get out of bed, I pray a little bit. And I say, today is going to be an awesome day. I'm going to have some trouble today, but it's still going to be an awesome day. And I know I've said that before, but it sets the day up right because I control whether it's awesome or not. And you do too.
Do you say this aloud? Is that a key part of it?
Aloud in my head.
Okay.
Right. Otherwise, I'm just sort of weird. I don't know. I'm just kidding. All right. Let's get out of here. books. We got lots of books. Who wants a book? Come get a book. Buy the Kindle. Leave a review. Let us know, and we'll send you a paperback book. Next month, March 30th, it goes on sale for a lot more than the Kindle version. Right, Nicole?
Right.
So get a book.
The scent of a new book and the fresh pages. This could be yours, everyone.
And if it sucks, which I don't think it does.
You can throw it against the wall,
Yes,
which is way more satisfying than throwing your Kindle.
Totally. Yeah, you don't want to throw your Kindle. So I would love for you to have a book. We've shared pictures of the books. The reviews that I get on the books, not the Amazon reviews, which have been awesome, which I asked for honest reviews, which is awesome. But when I talk to people, the one thing they say is they learned something, and they generally don't like these kind of books, but it was very readable. So
You're just an approachable guy, Roger.
How do you get a book? You go to Amazon, you buy the Kindle, and leave an honest review, and email us, and I will send you a free book with shipping included in everything. So go ahead and do that. And then also make sure you're not just surviving, but you're thriving.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.